Hey guys, this is the Forex price action trading course. This is lesson number 7, how to use trend lines for projections. Alright, so let's get going. Okay, so this is a lesson overview. First, I'll be explaining what projected trend lines are for and some general tips to keep in mind when drawing them. And then I'll provide my recommended 3-step process to draw projected trend lines efficiently and demonstrate this on the Euro-USD monthly chart. Alright, so let's get going. Alright, what are projected trend lines? Projected trend lines provide the trader a general sense of which price levels to watch for in the future. Alright, projected trend lines give the trader a general sense of price levels to watch for in the future. For example, let's draw this trend line from this pivot to this pivot. That's 3 touches and no breakouts, so it's legitimate. And this one, from this pivot to this pivot, that's like 5 touches with no breakouts, so it's legitimate. Now these projected trend lines give the trader possible future resistance levels and possible future support levels. Okay, and they are different from trend lines for clarity in the sense that they are forward-looking. Okay, so if you recall, trend lines for clarity generally talks about current price and past price. So, that trend line that we drew in the last lesson from this pivot to this pivot showed us that many people in the past respected this trend line for many years. Moreover, this breakout right here showed us the possibility that currently many people may be long biased at this point. So trend lines for clarity talks about current price and past price. On the other hand, trend lines for projections talks about the future and possible levels of resistance and support in the future. So in other words, trend lines for projections is more forward-looking. Alright, some tips to keep in mind. Do not draw every trend line possible. It is more efficient to only draw the trend lines that may come into play in the near future. Okay, so for example, if we follow the rules we did in lesson 5 on how to draw a trend line, we could draw this trend line right here from this pivot to this pivot because it has 3 touches, no surpasses or breakouts. However, this level is very far away from price, roughly 1,000 pips. Now, this is not a price level that will come into play in the near future, right? We don't know if price will ever reach these levels for the remainder of this currency pair, actually. So it is inefficient to be drawing trend lines that are very far from price. Rather, we want to draw trend lines that may come into play in the near future, such as these. Okay, so we do not want to draw every trend line possible because it is more time efficient. And more importantly, it keeps your attention on the present and not far into the future where price may or may not ever reach. Okay, so it's very important not to draw these trend lines that are far away from current price because first of all, it's inefficient, and second, it could possibly give you a faulty bias, right? Because if we draw a trend line up here, that literally means we think there's a possibility that price could get up there. And we do not know that. So again, we want to keep our attention on price levels that may come into play in the near future. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Alright, the 3-step process to draw projected trend lines. Here's number 1. Begin from the outermost pivots of the range. Alright. Okay, so if you think about it, this whole chart is actually a big range, right? And the outermost pivots will be up here and down here. Okay, so the outermost pivots of the range means all the pivots on the outermost side of this huge range. Right? Here and here. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw those. Alright, so we'll draw them from here, from this pivot to this pivot, 3 touches, no breakouts or surpasses. We draw them from here, same pivot. Could draw them from here, same pivot. Alright, these trend lines are very close apart, But remember, this is a monthly chart, so there's probably about 30 or 40 pips in between these trend lines. Okay, so let's go on to the other side. So this pivot to this pivot is 5 touches with no surpasses or breakouts, so it's legitimate. Okay, let's go on to step 2. All right, then work your way inward to the pivots within the range. So the pivots within the range means any pivot that is not on the outer side of this range. So that would mean this area, and possibly even this area. All right, so let's go ahead and draw those. All right, so we could draw one from this pivot to this pivot, 3 touches, no breakouts. Let's get one from this pivot to this pivot, and even this pivot to this pivot. All right, we'll go on the other side. So from this pivot to this pivot, and even this pivot to this pivot, right? No breakouts or surpasses. Okay, let's go on to number 3. All right, now don't forget the side-by-side trend lines. All right, side-by-side trend lines refers to trend lines that have pivots that are right next to each other. So for example, this pivot right here can be connected to the candle right next to it. There's no rule that states you can't do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw that. From this pivot to the candle right next to it and extend it. Okay, so you could draw these too. However, in this case, this trend line's already been broken out. So let's get rid of that. All right, so the basic charting for projected trend lines is done. However, at this point, this chart seems very congested with too many trend lines. So in this case, just to clear up the chart, let's get rid of all the trend lines that are furthest away from current price. Okay, so we're not going to need this one. We're not going to need this one or this one. And we're not going to need these either. Now we'll leave this trend line right here just because it provides a nice horizontal level of resistance. Okay, so leaving only the trend lines that are closest to price clears up the chart, which adds another level of efficiency to our charting. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, that was it for this lesson. From the next lessons, we're going to start getting into price patterns. Okay, the first one we're going to do is how to find legitimate head and shoulder patterns. Now, I say legitimate head and shoulder patterns because there are fake ones. And if I explain to you how to find legitimate ones, well, that simultaneously teaches you how to spot fake ones. Again, if you have any questions about this lesson, please leave it in the comments. And thanks for watching, guys. Hope you guys have a great day. Okay, bye.